just a quick moment, just give me a quick moment before starting, because I wanted to just to take a few seconds to say that it's been an incredible honor for me to work with Risako and Yuki and take part in this conference, working with Japan, despite the few kilometers which separate us. It's been an incredible honor to cooperate and coordinate the work with Risako and Yuki. I thank you very much. This is definitely the reason why I decided to study international relations. So I'm very happy to be here today. Shifting to less positive things, as Marco said, today we're gonna talk about COVID-19. We are here for that, and we are going to, in particular, analyze the measures the Japanese and the Italian government took in order to control the spread of COVID-19 and the effects that those measures had, in particular, on higher education system. We're going to start with a brief introduction with an overall view of the effects on the worldwide, and then we are going to look a little bit more in depth the Japanese case first, and then the Italian case. And then we are going to raise some questions without answers, of course. We are going to raise some questions about the future of well, education system, the evolution it will have, and the effects in the futures that the coronavirus will bring. I'm Andrea. I am an Italian student. I'm from Milan, but actually I'm living here in Bologna to study international relations. Well, we can start. If you can pass to the. Thank you so much. So COVID-19 pandemic, as we all know, has become an international emergency in a short period, and it will have long-lasting effects, of course. It has forced many countries with no alternatives option, but going for a complete lockdown, which was considered to be an effective measure in slowing the spread of the coronavirus around the globe. As we all know, coronavirus has significantly disrupted every aspect of human life. Apart from social distancing, businesses, community centers and NGOs have been required to close down. Mass gatherings, as we all know, have been prohibited, and other necessary measures have been imposed in many countries, allowing, for example, travel only for essential needs. All these measures were adopted so far in order to flatten the curve and to reduce the numbers of new cases related to COVID-19, in order to halt the exponential growth and hence reduce pressure on medical services. As the COVID-19 spreads across the globe, alarming bells also sounded in the educational sector, of course. The closure of the educational institutions has created havoc in the education system, the educational system. We have to consider that the pandemic of COVID-19 has created the largest disturbance in the educational system of the world in the history, affecting nearly 1.5 billion learners in more than 190 countries all around the world. If you switch to the next slide, we can see, thank you, we can see a very interesting image showing the total duration of school closures. In the next one, we have another image. Thank you. This is a video. In reality, I took just the image, but read the video to visualize the evolution in time of the closures of the schools around the world is very interesting, because starting from February, March 2020, we can see the evolution of the closures of the schools, and it's very interesting. Also, the number we can see on the right of the slide and of the image, the number of the learners affected worldwide, and see the evolution of the effects of COVID-19 is very interesting and really touching. Anyway, the coronavirus, as I was saying before, has significantly disrupted the education sector, which of course is a critical factor in a country's economic growth and development. The global education system has drastically changed during the last 6 months, and now it's an emergent focus of debate worldwide. As I was saying, in March 2020, many countries enforced the lockdown to control the spread of this virus. School closures were endorsed in most of the countries under diverse settings. Due to these, classes were suspended, and all examinations of schools, colleges, and universities, including entrances tests, for example, were postponed indefinitely. The home confinement and social distancing measures have completely changed the educational sector setting, from traditional methods to virtual methods of teaching and learning. 1.58 billion children and students from pre-primary to higher education have been affected by this pandemic in 2,000 countries. This is always important to remember. Thus, the worldwide lockdown has created very bad effect on students' life who, for example, in my case, experienced for the first time the meaning of isolation and being isolated. Due to this, the use of technology has been considered the most appropriate alternative to keep the education system in function in many parts of the world. But of course, shift from offline to online format has also been reported to increase the levels of stress and anxiety among teachers and students in different parts of the world. And it surely raised many questions for the future, questions that we are going to address at the end of the presentation. So here today, we will try to make a comparison between Japan and Italy. We are going to delineate the main measures taken by Japanese and Italian governments in order to control the spread of the virus and how these measures affected in particular the higher education system. It will be very curious and interesting comparison between two countries, two such different countries, and their, of course, different approaches toward the question. So I leave the floor to Risako, who will talk about the Japanese case.
Yeah, Andrea. Hello, everyone. My name is Risako Otsuka. I am a student in Aoyamagaki University. So I would like to talk about how universities in Japan have taken steps for COVID-19. And I'm going to show the timeline of it, referring to my university as one example. So let us begin with March 2020. At this time of last year, the COVID-19 just started spreading all over Japan. The infection number was gradually increasing. On April 7th, Japanese government announced our first state of emergency for the 7 prefectures, and then they announced it for the whole country on April 16th. Look at this picture. This is Shibuya, one of the busiest cities in Tokyo. I'm sorry, the angle and the time are a little bit different in these 2 pictures, but you can see the difference and the effect of state of emergency. So in such a situation, how were the universities in Japan? In Japan, universities usually start their new semester from the beginning of April, but as of the middle of March, many universities have already announced the put off the starting of new semester. Therefore, in fact, around 90% of universities have closed and postponed the start of new semester at the time of April 23rd. Aoyama Gakuin University also rearranged the start of spring semester from April 7th to April 21st, and then they postponed it again from April 21st to May 1st. During this time, university has introduced a digital system and prepared for online learning. When it became May, about 80% of universities had restarted their spring semester. However, schools had still closed, and as for my university, all students and staff were prohibited from entering the campus until May 31st. So lectures were mainly carried out online. Look at the style of classes. We can see, thank you. We can see 90% of universities adapted distance learning. In June, the state of emergency had been released, and some universities permitted exceptionally to have face-to-face style in a few classes, such as experiments and seminars. That is because these subjects were not thought to have enough effects with remote learning. The situation in universities didn't change a lot when it became July and August. So the first semester was over with no in-person class for 60% of students in Japan. After summer vacation, the second semester began in September. This time, about 80% of universities decided to combine the face-to-face and online classes. But there is a difference depending on the region. Thank you. Kanto district is where Tokyo, the biggest city in Japan, is located, and Kansai district is also where some big cities like Osaka or Kyoto are located. In those regions, it has less percentages of classes which took place all in person. Even if they adapted the combination of face-to-face and online, as to Kanto, more than 60% of classes are basically held online. The larger the population is, more the infectious numbers there is, and the universities are affected a lot by this. Also, main subjects carried out in person were still such as science or engineering, which need to conduct experiments, or seminars, which is possible to be done in a small group. And some universities which try to have their students back to in-person classes as much as possible have taken a method like this. They divide the class members in two groups and let one group attend in-person class and another group take it online. They do this by turn. That means students can go to school at least once in 2 weeks. This method has been mainly prioritized over freshmen because they have never been to school since enrollment and did not have chance to make friends. So the university is concerned about it and try to give them chance. The basic policy through the whole second semester were almost the same as September. So they continued that style until the end. And finally, in February, universities and students achieved all semesters in the new way of educational system. 2020 was a hard year for everyone. Here, so let me introduce two examples of supports university did for students. The first one is financial support. Last year, many universities offer subsidy for each student. The amount of money depended on universities, and it was mostly 30,000 yen to as much as 100,000 yen. These are provided for the preparation for remote learning, such as purchasing new digital devices or setting up the internet connections, or just for helping the lives of the students. Aoyama Gakuin University was one of them, which gave 50,000 yen to each student who have applied. Some universities refunded the expenditure for facilities instead of giving students benefits. Since the university had closed and students were not able to use the facilities, there were the rising voices requesting universities to pay back the cost of it. Moreover, the financial supports were not only by universities, but also the Japanese government backed up students. According to the Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science, and Technology, they established the Emergency Student Financial Support Program to provide cash handouts to students facing difficulties continuing their studies at universities and other institutions due to heavily reduced household incomes as well as less income from part-time jobs, so that they will not have to abandon their studies. The second one is counseling support. University established online counseling system because more and more students have problems in their studying or mental health. For example, the stay-home period was especially difficult for students who live alone. They have to stay at home and cannot meet friends. They struggle with loneliness in closed rooms. Also, as I said before, it is hard for freshmen who are not accustomed to studying at universities and do not have companions. It is natural that those students feel anxiety. So school counselors given an opportunity to listen to them and talk with them. And also not only school counselor, but the senior student stood up and give some advices as a good sympathetic supporter. So how about this year? As the 2021 spring semester, which just started this April, actually there was no nationwide data. But according to the survey conducted by a certain newspaper, 15 out of 23 principal universities in Japan plan to give their lessons mainly face-to-face. As an example, I'd like to introduce my university. My university started from the first week of April, which is the same as normal year. And we still have adapted the combination of face-to-face and online class, but the proportion was totally different from last year. So last year, lectures were held almost all online. This year, they have been held basically face-to-face, and only about 30% of class were online. The university have care for prevention of infection. They perform antivirus treatments for every desk and chair, and each classroom has several sanitizers and gloves. They organize the distribution of classrooms so that every classroom is used with a maximum of 65% of the available number of students. Of course, they always call to all students and staff to wear masks and to ventilate constantly. However, this in-person classes ended in just 3 weeks. In some prefecture, including Tokyo, government had the third state of emergency. The university has decided to switch almost all classes to online again. The state is supposed to be released on May 31st. If it released, students might go back to school, but we don't have any announcement yet. Here, having focused on the overall of how the COVID situation in Japan have been and how the university have been affected by the pandemic so far. The number of infection hasn't been decreasing in Japan, and there is a threat of other types of virus around there. No one can see the future, and these kind of difficulties will continue more, but universities try to take each experience for step to survive in new era. So that's all for me. So let's move on to the next presenter, Yuki. Thank you so much for listening.
Hi, can you hear my voice? Yeah, or not? Can you hear my voice? Yes, okay, thank you.
Yes.
And thank you. I'm Yuki Shoda. I'm a student of Toyo University. And first of all, I would like to talk about the situation of Japanese university during the COVID-19. The number of students who have dropped out of the school is 29,000 and suspended is 60,000. Surprisingly, each number has decreased by about 20% and 10% to the same period last year. The government believes that this is due to the effect of that 99% of the school postponed the deadline for the payment of tuition for the second semester, and 74% of the school offered tuition reduction or exemption for students with financial difficulties. And the government scholarship program for low-income families started in April last year, and as of December, nearly the 270,000 students were using it. And next, look at the study abroad. Okay, thank you. The coronavirus has had a major impact on the study abroad, not only in Japan, but all over the world. In fact, according to a survey on the number of international students coming to Japan from around the world, the number was 280,000, a decrease of 10.4%. The number of the international students include studies who were unable to travel to Japan at the scheduled time due to the effect of the new coronavirus infection and were forced to take an online class overseas. And the next, thank you. Then look at the study abroad from Japan. According to the survey of the Japanese students studying abroad conducted by the Japan Student Service Organization, the number of Japanese students studying abroad in the 2019 of the 107,000. This is the minus 6.8%. This decrease is thought to be the result of the postponement or cancellation of studying abroad programs due to the worldwide designation of infection disease risk level 2 or higher in response to the spread of the new coronavirus infection, as well as the restriction placed by governments and other organizations on entry of foreigners, including Japanese nationals. Also, the current situation is such that students cannot go abroad to study. It is possible that the number of students wishing to study abroad will increase when safe is ensured and students are able to travel abroad. This is because in the past, the year after the SARS of 2003 and the Great East Japan earthquake of 2011 put a stop to study abroad, the number of international students increased more than usual. With the current restrictions ongoing out due to the effect of the new coronavirus, there will be people who are, after considering their own career and life and happiness, will think about what kind of environment they want to be and choose to study abroad. And next is future university. I believe that the future of the university class will be hybrid of online and face-to-face classes. Also, our experience in online classes at the Corona Perfection, we have come to understand the good point of online classes and the important points that can be covered online class. I'd like to sort of the pros and cons of online classes in order to improve the hybrid class in the future. First, let's talk about the advantages. The first is age. Now the classes are online, so there is no longer a restriction that you have to be a student around the 20s. It is now easier for us to enter a university after becoming a member of a society and attending the class while working remotely. The next is condition. In the past, when students had a physical or mental problem, they were unable to go to study and attend the classes. But with the spread of online classes, this problem will disappear. Students will be able to take classes at a pace that is suitable for them without having to go to school, and which will make it harder for them to graduate late or quit. The recognition is that in online classes, many students are shown on the computer monitor around the video of the classes. In face-to-face classes, some students may sit far from the professor and are not be able to see what is going on. However, in online classes, everyone can see each other equally, so as if they were in front of the seat. So the professor may able to recognize more students, and which may lead to more active communication. Lastly, exchange. You no longer have to be in the same place to take a class, so you can take the other universities' classes and have a classes with the professor from other universities. Something that previously not only possible in person. In fact, I'm currently taking an online class at other universities, and this was unthinkable before the spread of online classes. By taking classes at other universities, I have the opportunity to meet new people and learn about the unique characteristic of the university. And I think that the quality of education will be improved if this kind of exchange between universities is further promoted in the future. Then I'll talk about the disadvantages. Thank you. And the first one is that there's no face-to-face interaction with people around you. One of the reasons why students are not satisfied with fully online classes is because what they want in the university includes experience outside the classroom. Students don't come to the university to take a classes and get a degree, but also to participate in the club activities and discuss with friends and interaction with the international students. In addition, for international students who spend a lot of money to study abroad, cross-cultural experience and international exchanges outside the classroom are considered to be one of the purpose of the studying abroad. And the loss of such an experience will have a significant impact on international students. Therefore, even if the new coronavirus settles down and we are able to accept the international students from overseas, the number of the applicants from overseas is expected to decrease as long as the class is continue to be offered online. Secondly, the project. There is a limit. There is a limit to amount of the group work that can be done online, where students and faculty can discuss and work together to create something. In fact, I had some experience. I'm currently at Toyo University of Architecture, and when I'm thinking about a building or city plan, it is difficult to understand what we are talking about without handling the same model at the hand. And it is also difficult to figure out how to make change together. Lastly, share the same place. Sharing the same place in the classroom or seminar may not seem to so important, but I think it actually plays a big role. For example, when you are discussing something, even if you are not participating in the discussion and not speak directly, being the same place basically strengthens your contribution to thinking together. When you are online, the pressure to think together is weaker if you are not interested. In the university classroom, there are many situations where you have to think and discuss together, and even if you don't speak up, you have to think hard together, and this will help you learn to think. That's why it's important to learn in the same place. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Yuki. Now I'm going to quickly delineate the measures the Italian government has taken so far to control the spread of the coronavirus. As I said at the beginning of the presentation, in an effort to contain the spread of the virus, several countries opted for a general lockdown that included workplaces, schools, of course, and people's social lives in general. Italy, of course, wasn't an exception, and through an administrative order called the Decree of the President of the Council of Ministers, the famous DPCM, became famous during the last 2 years. On March the 9th, 2020, all schools were closed and distance learning was adopted instead. As in many other countries, Italian teachers and professors had to face the challenge of moving from face-to-face instruction to online activities. This required not only relevant technological skills, but also a rethinking of teaching methodologies. Moreover, many families and students in turn have struggled with limited availability and of suitable digital devices or a lack of adequate internet connections to accommodate distance learning from home. Further, the role of supporting their children's online learning has been difficult for many parents, and last but not least, a scarce attention, this has to be mentioned, has been paid to students with special needs. Taken together, these realities have made ensuring continuity of teaching very challenging, even in the most advanced countries where conditions are mostly favorable. All these, of course, affected pretty much the higher education system. It is important to underline at the very beginning that in many cases, the term closures of schools and higher education institutions refers only to the fact that the buildings were not accessible to activities in presence. This is, for instance, the case of Italy, where the teaching and learning activities were and are right now ongoing. Academic and administrative staff are working and guaranteeing the continuity of services, and students are attending lessons online and studying at home, as we all know. Anyway, the Italian government has adopted progressive measures leading on March the 4th, 2020 to the resolution of interrupting in-presence didactic in all educational institutions, including higher education, in order to decrease the spread of the COVID-19. University exams and final dissertations, for example, have been coordinated online since the 1st of March 2020, and all higher education institutions have established appropriate modalities in order to assure the regular deployment of exams and final degrees within the substantial autonomy granted by law to their activities. Schools in Italy reopened on September the 14th of this year, of course. 1.6 billion euros has been earmarked for construction work, to the purchase of innovative tools and the recruitment of training of school staff. The safety guidelines and protocols drawn up by the Ministry of the Education and the Scientific, together with the Scientific Technical Committee, impose the requirement for the mask, of course, to be worn from 6 years and upwards, the distance of at least 1 meter between students, and the sanitation of environments and the reorganization of spaces and school hours, of course. More than 1 billion euros has been allocated to the university sector. Safety protocols for the reopening of universities were similar to those required at school, but in turn, the organization of the lessons was different, left to the degree of autonomy which universities have. Directors, this is very important. Directors' conference the so-called UI, recommended also not to forget the students from abroad, neither the fragile ones nor the foreigners. This is very important to keep in mind. And in this regard, several universities have planned a phase 3, so-called blended phase, based on mixed teaching, open the university, but continuing to ensure the online lessons, which is the actual organization of the universities. Another risk to take into account was the possibility of the collapse of the enrollment. In fact, the economic crisis caused by the health emergency risks to collapse the enrolled ones to the university. To say it is a report of this July by CMET, the Association for the Development of Industry in the South, which also highlights the relationship between the rate of transition school-university and the weakening of income based on what happened after the crisis of 2008, the financial crisis, of course. Already in 2008, according to Data Ambur, the National Agency for Evaluation of the University Systems and Research, the percentage of graduates who enroll in the university has dropped by over 5 points from 48.9% in 2007 to 43.4% in 2013. For 2020-2021, the SVMETS estimates a reduction of these rates of 3.6 points in southern Italy and 1.5 points in the central northern Italy. In the two graphs you can see in the slides, I'm sorry, they are in Italian. I took them from two interesting sources online, Istat and Mur's websites. Anyway, it is easy to analyze it because the red line represents the situation in the north and central Italy, while the blue one, I'm talking, of course, of the first graph. The blue line represents the situation in the south of Italy. As we can see, overall, the enrollments in the university has been decreasing, but more in the south. So the south is suffering much more. In general, in the second graph, we can see the decreasing trend of enrollments since 2008. We can see a decreasing trend. As I was saying, after the 2008 crisis, the number of trainees in Italy continued to decrease until 2013, the year in which recovery began, which in 2019 had not yet brought registration to pre-crisis levels. Now, to contribute, of course, to the impoverishment of families with consequences on expenditure on education, we have to add the COVID-19 crisis. All these in a country that over the years has already accumulated a delay compared to European partners for access to tertiary education. We have, unfortunately, not to forget this. In Italy, according to OECD data, there is a registration rate of 54.7%, which is a value below other countries such as France, in which the rate of registration is 66.2, or in Germany or in Spain, which is even higher, 73%. As for the same can be said for the numbers of graduates, Italy occupies the penultimate place in the European Union, ahead only of Romania, only with 27.6% of the 34 years old Italians who have a degree, according to Eurostat. So, in order to conclude, we can outline some points for the future, some challenges of the present and challenges ahead in the future. What will change for higher education and personal mobility after the coronavirus? What will be the impact on internationalization of higher education? The university, by definition, is a community of students and teachers, of disciplines and knowledge, a community that is rooted in one place, but that lives on a relationship, as we are demonstrating today. Exchanges and mobility at the national and international level, of course. Online lessons, classes with a limited number of students, internationalization at home are just some of the possible consequences. On the basis of the current situation, we tried to draw certain outlines for the future. In particular, we focused on 4 main points. Digitalization, firstly, is undoubtedly a central element in managing the emergency, and the crisis will probably act as an accelerator for some process, and it has already done. In fact, if online teaching has allowed millions of students in Italy and worldwide to continue their studies, graduate, and continue to do research, the same is also true in the field of mobility and the recognition of qualification. So this could be a good side of the COVID effects. A second area concerns mobility. How will it be affected by the current crisis? As Yuki said, will everything return to the pre-crisis status quo, or will we see changes, for example, more regional and less global mobility? Will there be a return to a significant degree of physical mobility considered irreplaceable by online activity, or instead will the push of the use of digital solutions lead us towards a globalized and virtual mobility, with an increase of students enrolling in universities from other parts of the world without the need to move from their homes? Do we have more internationalization at home? Will we see a growth in transnational education as an adoption strategy of higher education institutions? These are the questions. Another group of issues concerns final qualifications. This is a very important issue. Many countries are currently carrying out online teaching activities both at the school and the higher education level, including examinations, graduation thesis, defense sessions, and in the near future, a final higher secondary school leading examinations. Will anything change in the knowledge, skills, and competencies inherent in the final title? How will the training and therefore also the learning outcomes change in the areas where greater practical activity is required? In fact, will there be a scenario that the current situation leads to, also in the field of higher education, of an increase in short training courses, for example, highly oriented to the job market? It is possible that on the one hand, there is a percentage of the population that will have to reconvert after the crisis, either because the crisis led to the cancellation of their previous employment contract, for example, or because digitalization has made competencies less strategic, or because the post-COVID-19 job market introduces new areas of activity. What form will these new training offers take? Will they be online, short, tightly linked to digital innovation and oriented to the job market? Can we expect a rise in non-traditional forms and learning of qualifications? Finally, a crucial element that we have never to forget to mention is the possible increase in educational inequality. I talked about it previously. Will the digital push be a social leveler, or will it create more social disparity? We have never to forget this issue, because it will be, and it is already one of the main challenges in the present, and it will be in the future one of the main challenges, will access to technology as well as the online study mode leave someone excluded? We have to think about it. Could the aspect of the economic crisis generated by the pandemic also signify a lower participation in higher education with the attendant cuts and the reductions of education costs as non-essential expenses? These are the questions we raised for the analysis of the current situation. We thank you for your attention very much. We are here for any doubt or curiosity. Thank you so much.